In this video I'm going to show you how you can use an Enneper curve to create different types of rings. And the software we're going to use is Fluid Designer for 3D printing. And here's an example of a ring with a round stone in it and an Enneper curve. The next one here is also a round gem with an Enneper curve, and that is in fact just the other one flipped upside down. Here's an example of a Enneper curve with a trillion gem in it, and this is the one I'm going to try and recreate in this video. And here's an example of an Enneper curve with an oval gem in it. And all of these are kind of generated in a similar sort of way, and depending upon the settings that you do for the curve, you can put different gemstones in them. Now I'm actually going to start off by using a gem setting ring with 4 prongs, and I'm going to use this object here with the round gem in it. So here's a default object that's available if you purchase Fluid Designer software from us, or the assets I should say. And what we've got here is a default ring. In this case the size of it is 15.09, but I'm going to change that in a second. We've got a round gemstone and a round ring to support that gem there, and some prongs. And we can adjust all of these quite easily because these are parametric smart objects. So for example, the ring itself is a curve, and at the moment it's 1 by 5 millimeters. Well, I could change it to 1 by 3 millimeters. I could thin it out at the bottom there, but as you can see, that affects the prong settings. But if I'll just switch on screencast keys here. If I just press the tab key on the keyboard and select that control point there, and just change my radius, I'll just drag it out actually, you can see that I can fill it out so that the prongs are actually going into the ring there. So that's quite easy to do in Fluid Designer for 3D printing, but clearly depending upon the height of the gem I might need to adjust these heights, but again it's pretty easy to do that. Just move that out of the way. I can just move that up and just move the gem up, and then just adjust the height of these prongs. Okay, now I'm not actually going to keep the round gem on here, and I don't need the round ring either in this instance. And I'm going to change it from my default ring size, which is 15.09 millimeters. I'm going to change it to a different size ring. Now when you do that, you need to remove the bevel object, the thickness first of all, and then we'll just hide it and deselect that. And I'm going to use a different size, and I'm going to use P+. So I just switch that on into view and highlight it, and I'm going to apply a cross section of 1 by 3. So that's 1 millimeter thick here and 3 millimeters there. And if I just view that from the top and just press the tab key to go into edit mode, and if I just highlight that control point at the top now, if I change the radius you can see I can spread this out now. So I'm just going to spread it out until my prongs are within the borders of the ring. And clearly I need to come out of edit mode now, and I need to position these prongs better. I'm going to have to adjust them later as well, depending upon the curve that I put in. So I've just moved those up to reposition them. So I'm currently got a UKP plus size 18.4 millimeter ring now, with a cross section of 1 by 3. Now what I want to do is to add my Enneper curve, and to do that I'm going to open up the toolbox here, and I'm going to go to add curve, and I'm going to add an Enneper curve. And there's my default Enneper curve with a P value of 2 and Q value of 3, and as we change that, notice the shape of my object changes. and there's lots and lots of different curves that you can select here. And if I change the scale, you can see that it increases the diameter of it, and obviously the height increases the height. Now I'm going to switch the resolution down to about 30. And one thing that's really important when you do this is this rounds figure here. You don't want rounds to be anything other than 1. Otherwise you can have problems with 3D printing. Now these other values down here you can leave. The bevel 0.5, that's actually the radius here. Now that's just useful when you're looking at it at the moment. We are going to change the cross section of it over here in a second. So bevel, if I set that bevel at 0, you can see I can see the raw curve here. 0.5 as a default size just tells you that this is 1mm thick, so it just gives you something to work to. Now if I just go to view and top view here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this up to 5. I think that's the one I'm going to work to in this lesson. And I'm just going to increase this, and I'm just going to make it so that it's the same as the internal diameter of the ring, which remember is about 18mm. Okay, so those are the settings that I'm going to make there. Now obviously you can do all sorts of different settings, but that's okay. So I'm going to close this panel down now. I don't need to use that anymore. And what I need to do is I need to rotate this about the x-axis. So R on the keyboard, X to restrict rotation about the x-axis, and 90 degrees. So that just rotates it into that orientation now, and I can then pull this up and I can position it where I want, and I'm going to position it there. Now you can see that my shape here for my gem is actually a trillion shape. If I just go to gem shapes here, but obviously there are different types of gem that you can use. The kind of default shape of this particular Enneper curve setting is this trillion shape, which is really nice. Now what I want to do is to strengthen this. I don't want to use the default thickness of 1mm. So what I want to do is to change the bevel object. Now if I change it to 1 by 1, I get that shape. If I change it to 1 by 2, it looks like that, which is maybe what you want. I'm actually going to change it to 2 by 1. 1 by 2 at the moment is 1mm there and 2mm there. If I go the opposite way round and the cross section, if I choose 2 by 1, what I get is 2mm deep and 1mm thickness there, and I think that looks quite good in this instance. Okay, so that's how I can reshape the thickness of my Enneper curve. Now if I view this from the back and just press the home key on the keyboard, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate this thing through 30 degrees. I'm not quite sure, I think it's the y-axis. So if I rotate this 30 degrees, whoops, not 40, 30. What that's doing is that's just putting this point here directly in line with the z-axis. I want to just be able to position the gem accurately. Okay, so I've just rotated that Enneper curve. Now I'm going to bring in my trillion gem, and we can do that by going to File and Append. And we always go up through the menu system in Fluid Designer until we get to the Groups folder. And I want a gem shape, and I'm going to use the trillion gem, and it's always the object that we append. So it's the trillion gem object. So let me just see where that is here. So it's this object here. And if I view this from the top and just pull my gem up there, we're not actually going to print the gem, we just want to see what size this is going to be. Now as you can see, if I view it from the top now, view it from the back, you'll see that the orientation of my gemstone is different from the orientation here, so I need to rotate it about the y-axis 180 degrees. So if I just type 180 in there, that just flips the gem around. So it's now in the same sort of orientation as the location on the Enneper curve where I'm going to place it. So if I just go to view and back view now to scale the gem down, at the moment the default size for this gem is that, like all the gems that are on the system, is 10 millimeters. So if I press S on the keyboard and then just move the mouse in, that looks like it might fit, but that's probably the best fit there. And if you look in the toolbar at the top of the screen, you'll see that the scale is 0.8. So in other words, a gem that is 0.8, in other words 8 millimeters, trillion gem is what we need. And we can see that here as the Z value. So that's just the size of the gem we need. And so that gem will fit quite nicely there into the Enneper curve, and all we need now is some prongs to actually locate it. So we have got some prongs on the screen here. So the inner one I'm going to delete, so I just press the X key on the keyboard to delete that. And if I go to view and back view, if I press the tab key on the keyboard to go into edit mode and press A to select all the control points, all I've got actually are two control points, one on the top and one at the bottom of these prongs. And the default setting for these prongs is that a mirror modifier is used to create a mirror in the X and the Z here. So that gives us all four. If we remove that, you can see two of those settings disappear. If we remove that, that other setting disappears. So in other words, I can actually delete the whole of that mirror modifier, because in this instance I don't want four prongs, I want three. One in that corner, one there and one there. And so if I go to view and back view, and if I just reposition this in the corner there, now what I need to do is I need to switch off the snap here, and then that will give me better control over the position of this. Now there's also this tilt value here of -22.5. If I change that, you can see that it rotates it. And I think what I need here is probably -30 degrees. Positions this nicely in the corner there, relative to the shape of this object as well, this trillion, this triangular shape. So that's one of my objects. Now what I want to do is to really create three of them, and we can do that by using an array modifier. And to use the array modifier, what I need to do is I need to add an empty. I'm going to rotate that around an empty, and what I need to do is, I'm not sure whether it's Z or Y I need to rotate it. I've got a feeling it's Y I need to rotate it. So 120 degrees, I might need to change that later. I want three of these, so 3 times 120 is what I need. And before I can do that, I need to change the origin of this to the cursor. I want to rotate it about my empty, which is at the cursor, so I need the origin of this object to be at the cursor as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an array modifier, and I don't want relative offset, I want an object offset, and I'm going to rotate it about that empty, which I've set at 120 degrees. So if I select that object there, so you can see there's the second array object, and if I do 3 here, you can see it positions it nicely there. So I've used the empty with the 120 degrees, and I've used an array modifier with a count of 3, and I've rotated it about the empty. Now all we need to do now is to sort of tidy this up. So if I go to view and top view, now you can see that the bottom of these are all sticking out through there. Whoops, dear me, Control Z, let me come out of that. Okay, so I want to position these now. So if I select that and move it up, that will give me about 3 or 4 millimeters at the top there to bend over my gem. This one obviously doesn't need to be sticking out of the bottom like that, so usually somewhere in the middle there. And as you can see, that particular one at the back isn't located at the moment. So what we need to do is come out of edit mode there, select the gem itself, and we need to thicken up and widen up the bottom of this gem so that it takes into account our prongs. And we can do that by going into edit mode and just select that control point at the top there, and we're going to fatten up the bottom of this, and we do that by changing the radius value here. So if I just drag that value out, you can see I need to cover that prong there, so I can bring it down perhaps a little bit. I could reposition my prong at an angle instead of vertically. That would be another way of doing it. But you can see that that's put the prong in the inside the actual ring itself now. All I've got to do is, if I come out of edit mode again now, and if I select these prongs, I just need to position the bottom of that prong now so that it works. So press the tab key to go into edit mode, just move this prong up. Can you see that's controlling all three? Just move it up so that this prong is inside the ring, that one is neatly inside the ring, and so is this one here. So there we are. We've got our Enneper curve. That's this object here. We've set it to a cross section of 2 by 1. We've got our 3 prongs located, and we've got our ring. Now, because these are all parametric objects, what we can do is convert the curve to a mesh, convert the prongs to a mesh, convert our UK size 18.14 millimeter UK size P plus ring, convert that to a mesh, and we can actually select the gem itself, the trillion gem. We don't want to print that, so we can X on the keyboard to delete it. Now if I highlight the ring, and if I hold the shift key down and highlight the prongs and just join them together, and then if I hold down the shift key and highlight the Enneper curve and join them together, all 3 objects are now as one, and I've now got something which the only thing I need to do now is to export it as an OBJ or an STL file and run it through Netfab Basic to make any minor repairs to it. So if I go to File and Export, and I'll save it as a wavefront object to the desktop, and I'm just going to call it Enneper ring UKP plus, and if I export that object to the desktop and just wait until it saves it. Okay, so that's now saved it. So if I just go to Netfab Basic and Project and open up my Enneper ring UKP plus file. This will just take 1 minute in Netfab just to make any minor repairs. You always need to use Netfab when using Fluid Designer for 3D printing. You can see we've got a warning triangle, but not to worry. So you hit the repair button. So there's some border edges and a few holes, but you just hit automatic repair and execute. And say this is our parametric smart curves we've used, so when we click update, they're all repaired. So click apply repair and remove the old part. And there essentially is your 3D printable ring. So part, export it as a wavefront object. I just write it on top of the original file and save that, and you can see that that's actually saved it. So there's your file to be sent to be sliced or sent to Shapeways and you could get this printed in brass or bronze for probably about £30. So good luck. You can create lots and lots of different types of Enneper curve ring in a similar sort of way and fit in different types of gem depending upon the actual Enneper curve that you generate. Okay, so that's the one we've created in this lesson. Here's another example of one that I created in a similar sort of fashion. I haven't actually added the prongs to this. I've added a bezel ring, so that's an alternative way of actually doing it. But this will also be a 3D printable ring as well. So good luck in creating your own. Thank you.